Hey everybody, welcome to the Spoon Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Wolf, and today's guest is Ralph Newhouse, who is the CEO and founder of Chefman and ChefIQ. If you are like me and you have lots of countertop cooking appliances, or you just are super interested in that space and are always checking what new products are out there, Chefman and ChefIQ are really interesting companies. And Ralph tells the story of how he got started in the business in those early days as a reseller of other products from other brands. And he ultimately decided how he needed to build his own products to get what he really wanted and to bring value to consumers. And then eventually he founded a new company in ChefIQ, which is a more tech-forward brand that builds around connectivity and smart kitchen platforms. And so we hear about that whole evolution. We also hear Ralph's opinion on where this space is going as well. And there's a couple of reveals in this interview that about the company that you may not know, some news I think we broke, so you'll want to listen to that for sure. If you are interested in the future of the kitchen and want to hear conversations about this, you'll definitely want to be at the Smart Kitchen Summit, June 4th and 5th in Seattle. I have a special discount code that I reserve only for my podcast listeners. Use the code PODCAST. When you go to smartkitchensummit.com and check out for your ticket, you'll get 15% off. That's our best discount code that we have, so you'll want to make sure you use that. And we'd love to have you and see you in Seattle. All right, that's it for now. Let's get to my conversation with Ralph. Hey, well, I'm really excited to be here with Ralph Newhouse, the CEO of Chefman, and also ChefIQ, which I want to talk about. You guys, you're essentially running two startups in one, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think a lot of people who buy countertop appliances, they've definitely heard of Chefman and ChefIQ if they go out there and shop for them, because you guys have been pretty pervasive in terms of being on all the different channels for people who want to buy this stuff. But I want to hear a little bit of the story and also the launch of ChefIQ, why you guys decided to do a startup within a startup, but when did the company come into being?
Yeah, so Michael, great to be here with you. Thanks for having me on. To give you some background, starting all the way back in 2009, late 2009, I was in the business of purchasing excess inventories that were made available by leading brands throughout the United States. So I'd buy something for typically pennies on the dollar and then redistribute that back into more of the secondary market, so your off-price channels, et cetera. And that was the beginning of our corporate history. So that till about 2014, that was primarily our business model. And we were venturing in small electrics. That was the lion's share of the merchandise that we were selling back then. And so I got a window into, the industry, into the price point, which turned out to be very helpful later on in terms of how we built this model, very differently than I think most other startups and new entrants into this space. 2014 came around and we were quite successful peddling other people's wares, but we're obviously looking for more control of our own destiny. We were looking for a brand that we can build our own equity. And so the idea came to launch our own brand of small appliances under the Chefman label. And that was primarily because we had the experience within the small appliance genre. Initially, it was very primitive. We kind of went overseas, slapped our label on products, and imported it. We leveraged the closeout side of the business to gain placement for the Chefman brand. So I'd have a Cuisinart, stand mixer, and I'd approach retailers like Big Lots and say, well, if you want this at this
Interesting.
point, yeah, you got we have the sandwich maker available on the Chefman label.
You're hustling as an entrepreneur. You're using your existing kind of entry points into the channel to get your new brand in there.
That's exactly right, which is somewhat unconventional in terms of building a brand and so very, very much so.
That's great. So you decided around 2014 to build your own products, and eventually, early on, you're kind of using maybe models out of ODMs and OEMs from overseas. What point did you sort of think, hey, we need to maybe build our own technology, iterate around our own kind of concepts for appliances?
Yeah, so fairly early on, I think the challenge we came across and everybody faces when you're in a commoditized space is you want to have some pricing power and you want to begin to develop some leverage so that your products can command shelf space and stay there and build a sustainable model. So pretty early on, we realized that we're going to have to look at different touch points and begin to customize them around our model, which was unparalleled value. And so we began moving away from a very primitive approach and beginning to invest within our own teams and building up engineering capability and looking at where we can affect the most change for the least amount of cost. And that was more or less our introduction into UI, UX, display technology, and kind of focusing on the brains of the product and understanding that if we can control the firmware and the user interfaces and the user experience, well, then we can work our way backwards and eventually get down to the rest of the hardware. So that's really a pivotal change that happened somewhere in the 2016s. And from then on there, we became hyper-focused on finding affordable ways to increase the value proposition that we were offering to our customers. And I guess the rest was history, because once we started down that path, we've made a lot of inroads into the conventional distribution, such as your Walmarts and Best Buys and Costco's and Amazons of the world. And over the last 6-7 years since the brand has really begun to take form in what we recognize as a Chefman today, we've accomplished a great deal of distribution competencies and supply chain competencies. And that resulted in our brand being distributed globally, in the United States, where we can be found at every big box retailer and online as well. So quite the a journey it's been. But
you guys are across a number of product categories, right? So what was there any thought path around, okay, we're going to do this space first, and I'm not even getting into connected products yet, but you were thinking about, hey, because I know you guys have tea makers, I think you have sous vide, you have all these different categories. What was the progression path there?
Sure. And I'll use the beverage category as a great example to kind of highlight the question that you're putting forth. Because I come from the closeout background, kind of, the entrepreneur with the duffel bag going store to store, it opens your eyes wide in terms of how to read and how to understand the retail environment, the products that had brands that were very difficult to dethrone, and then kind of the niche categories that nobody was really truly focusing on. And so those kind of became the focus of where we put our energy so that we can build something that was sustainable, but without necessarily rubbing up against the Keurigs and the brands that are KitchenAids, et cetera, that have a lot of dominance and brand equity over decades and decades. So tea kettles, electric kettles was a great example. We saw that, in Europe, electric kettles were a staple in most homes, and that in the United States there was very little market penetration, and so we started to develop a line of electric kettles, and we found that there was very little resistance in terms of the competitive landscape for retailers to push back against, and so we started placing our electric kettles across the spectrum, and these products did phenomenally well at the retail level. Glass, especially, wasn't something that was easily spotted within the U.S. market. And so we've kind of used that as a platform to launch other categories that we felt that we can add a lot of difference to. So today we're actually number one in the United States with 38% market share in the electric kettle categories. It's a good example of coming at it from a different direction, finding a niche, and sticking to it to stand out from the crowded pack. And we did the same with the espresso category. So we kind of looked at that space and recognized the Breville's of the world and the Nespressos and the price points that were prohibitively expensive for the average consumer, and also the intimidation factor that went along with understanding the virtues and the capability of espresso makers. So we launched a line of espresso makers about 4 years back, and we simplified the user interface, made everything touch, and also one-touch operation. So you'd just be able to select your particular parameters with a single touch, and then the coffee maker would brew as you specified. So really removing the intimidation barrier. And that immediately found success at the Walmarts and Best Buys of the world, where they were kind of looking for a brand to kind of fill that spot where the legacy brands were kind of not focusing in on. And so that's another good example of how we kind of approach our roadmap.
You guys at some point started moving into connected products. Now, obviously, we've seen the space around connected kitchen stuff go up and down. There's been some hits, some misses. You guys come in at the lower price point, but then also interestingly, looking at it from afar, you started essentially a startup within a startup in ChefIQ, which you are building, I think, I guess I would say a more technology forward brand. It looks like you're trying to build a common platform with an app. Talk about your thinking there. And was this a big vision for going into more connected, more tech forward countertop appliances?
Yeah, I think this all came about more in a chronological order of we were focused on the user interfaces and the user experience. We, obviously living in the world, understood that the ramifications of technology could really accelerate and elevate anything that we were offering that wasn't, powered with the ability to have smarts enabled within the hardware. So that was the impetus to get cracking on ChefIQ. It was we can do so much more. If we develop software that we can layer over the hardware and put forth an experience that was kind of unrivaled. We also knew that there'd be some advantages in that we were really small, so we had a really tight team. When you're building software applications that need to be integrated within hardware, you have to have very focused and synchronized teams that are working lockstep within one another to be able to put forth that kind of seamless experience that the end user expects. So for us, it was kind of like a natural evolution of what we were doing with Chefman and the focus we were paying to the UIs and saying, well, there's kind of so much more that we can do if properly applied. The other thing is when we kind of looked at the smart hardware and the ecosystem that was developing, we felt a lot of brands were kind of missing the mark. So there were brands out there that were creating hardware that were very expensive. And it was difficult to make the value case to the consumer on why they needed something with this, with the smarts at these elevated price points. So we knew that if we took our expertise at supply chain and married that with our infrastructure and the team that we had over here, perhaps we can build something that had technology underpinning the experience, but that the consumer wouldn't have to pay for. And so our whole thesis is that can we develop these great products at similar or comparable price points to the leading brands out there, but that are so feature packed that over time the consumer will come to subconsciously and eventually consciously arrive at the realization that, wow, we really are getting so much more. These products are all connected to one another. They're all talking to one another. And they're all giving us those little moments of magic that we've come to really rely on. And so we've kind of done that with the advent of ChefIQ in first and foremost putting together a tech stack that I think is not really comparable to anyone else in this space. Our costs in terms of Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, processor, and display, it comes in at a fraction of what it does for our competitors. And therefore we can kind of build all this up without having to incur that extra charge on the customer, enabling them to slowly appreciate the extra value that we have in our smart appliances.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talk about how price is such an important part, and I think you're right in that a lot of the early entrants had such high price points. And I actually, the timing is interesting. I just wrote an article today essentially saying the June oven is probably cooked because all the indicators are that they're not building anything. They've been out of stock for about a year now. And that was like one of the early examples, right? I think it was early on, it's $1,000. They maybe got down to $600. And so it's interesting that you talk about the importance of price point.
Yeah, and it's key. So interesting story with June is a couple of years back, I was in Shenzhen, and we were on a business trip to China. And in the morning in the hotel we were visiting, we were waiting by the elevators for the rest of our team to get together, and we noticed a large group of folks that were representing June. They were wearing tags identifying themselves. And I think it was about 25 of them, and most were engineers. And we got talking, and they were expressing to us, the excitement for the upcoming June oven launch. And I remember thinking at that time, and this was pre kind of ChefIQ days, like what an effort these type of products really take to bring to market. I mean, you need teams and teams of people to effectuate, cutting edge innovation and building products that are really revolutionary. Fast forward, a few years, we're going to be coming out, and we'll talk about that in a moment, with our version of our countertop oven. And we've been able to accomplish that following the same playbook we followed in prior product launches, which was, a really lean and small team, keeping the electronics and the hardware costs under control. And we're going to be able to retail something that we think, far surpasses their value proposition at a fraction of the cost. And so that's just a good highlight of what you can do in this space if you really get out there and roll up your sleeves and investigate the technologies that are already in use, and understanding how to pull all these divergent parts and components from around the world together, and not losing sight of the very important fact that if you want the smart hardware to resonate with the consumer, price is a crucial component of this at this juncture. And until the value and the features that are put out warrant more premium price points.
Yeah, I mean, I think the June story is complicated because they were acquired by Weber, which really is a grill company, and they're owned by private equity. And it seems like almost they bought them to just inject that technology maybe into their grills platform. I think it's just a delicate balance for a company like you, right? Because you guys are about affordability, but you're building a tech stack that you say is a lot lower cost, and you're very focused on UI. And one of the other challenges I think in the space has been sometimes people put on complicated technology UIs, like maybe app control over a device when they could just push a button. So how do you strike that balance, right? Because you're building ChefIQ, you do have an app, and you're trying to strike a balance between we're an UI-centric company, but also we want to elevate our tech stack and our tech evolution.
Yeah, so great question. And rewind back a moment to the comment on June, which is, they and I think a lot of companies suffer from the same issue, which is you kind of get tunnel vision, right? You're working on a project and you stop thinking about the consumer, and you start really focusing about how to make this hardware, elevated at every possible touch point, and you start overthinking, and you kind of lose sight of the simplicity that initially you were chasing by offering technology when technology underpins the experience. So I think lots of brands fall prey to that. I think we fall prey to that time to time. We constantly have to remind ourselves that at the end of the day, these appliances are used for convenience. They need to be really easy to operate. And so what we kind of do is we look at, first and foremost, how do we build terrific hardware that effectuates a great result for the customer time and time again, without the need to be connected, right? So it's got to be super intuitive, super simple to use. And then you kind of use the technology to accomplish a couple of different things, almost behind the scenes. Number one is we can always update these products throughout the lifetime that the user owns and operates the product. So that gives us the ability to always surprise and delight with new feature sets that the customer gets post-purchase without incurring any additional cost. The second thing is trying to find the little magical moments that do provide a lot of value, that are only possible in a connected experience, such as if we're talking about an oven. It's if I'm in a different room and I get a quick notification that the oven is now preheated and ready to insert the food, or I get a little notification that perhaps the food needs to be flipped or removed from heat. These are kind of the gentle little things that technology can afford, that really do make a big difference in from the consumer's perspective. And then finally, it's understanding the importance long term of having a connected ecosystem and having our own products talk to one another throughout the cook to give the user even more versatility and flexibility. So I'll give you an example of that. We launched our wireless cooking thermometer about a year ago. That was the perfect application for an app, because the thermometer itself, it's a stay-in food wireless thermometer, basically a promise never to overcook or undercook your food again. And the limitation of the hardware is you can't have a display, because that product is either going into high heat oven or deep fryer, air fryer, to embrace an app on your phone or iPad to be able to interface with the product. So that was a great use case for where technology is absolutely needed to operate the product. And then outside of that, it's important to have unlimited wireless range if you're going to smoke for 20 hours and you want to monitor the temperatures within the smoker, or you have a household full of things going on, and you don't have to sit there babysitting your grill or oven or stovetop. Now, when we were working on our new mini oven, one of the things we really wanted to see was...
Which, by the way, I hope we're making a little bit of news today. Yeah. We're talking about your new oven. You guys are going to be debuting that, I think, at the Houseware Show in March.
That's correct, yeah.
So I just want to kind of put that little note in. We always like to make news here on the podcast, so tell us about it.
Yeah, so we're really excited. We're going to be launching our latest ChefIQ innovation at the Houseware Show late March. It's a countertop mini oven. On the hardware, it's really unlike any other oven in the market right now. It's got a lot of touch points that are unique and wonderful, from soft door close, which is a first in a small electrical appliance, to guided rack position. So always, depending on what you're cooking, which rack position to utilize. It's got our newest DC brushless motor technology, which is probably the single biggest achievement in the product. It allows us to fit, the fan and motor about 1/5 the size of what air fryers and convention fans were prior to us introducing this technology. For the consumer, it's quieter, but it also cooks 40% quicker than your average air fryer. So it's significantly faster than obviously a conventional convection oven that utilizes air for circulation, and even more so on your newer class of air fryers that are meant for speed and crispiness. And there'll be, we have our first touch display on the unit as well. So everything is very easily, the menus and navigations are very intuitive. And then the interaction or interconnectivity with our other ChefIQ products are also noteworthy. So for instance, if you own our wireless cooking thermometer out of the box, that'll work together with the mini oven. So as a potential use case, you may be wanting to cook a steak. The oven will preheat, will notify you when that's ready for you to put the food in the oven. Since we now have a sensor within the meat, we can coordinate between the oven and the thermometer to make sure that the oven is set to the correct parameters. We can allow you to elongate or shorten the cook mid-cook, depending if you can't be attentive to the oven at the right time. And then obviously once the food is ready, we can automatically shut the oven for you and cool it down so that you can leave the food there inside the cavity without having to running back to kind of capture your food before it kind of overheats. So these are the type of features and value adds that we're super, super stoked about. But what's really amazing is the price point. So we're going to get out there. MSRP is $299. So for about $300, you get all this technology, including, the touch screen, over-the-air updates, soft door close, DC brushless fan technology, pure LED lighting, so you get natural lighting, which makes the food look kind of artful and beautiful within your kitchen, and all sorts of other like tricks and value adds that we're going to release in spurts leading up to the Houseware Show. So really a revolutionary product that is priced at what a conventional oven with this spec would retail for. And that's something.
It doesn't have like some of the machine computer vision elements that a June does that probably raises the price though,
no camera,
which is a cool it's a cool feature, but honestly, how much times are you using the camera? Also, what are the different types of heating? So it sounds like convection and air heating, air fry.
Yeah, so it's convection with the DC, so it's air fry, and then conventional, cook, bake, dehydrate, etc.
$299. That is a good price point. And when will that be shipping?
That'll be shipping in August of this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I do want to ask, for those who are wondering, you guys, you're running two companies. Chefman had a pretty good brand name. You launched a separate ChefIQ. What was the thinking there to build essentially a separate brand within Chefman?
So we take a really long-term view when it comes to mass market adoption of smart products, especially within the kitchen. So we wanted a clear differentiator between the two brands. Chefman, is not a smart brand, and ChefIQ is. And so we felt that giving the brand its own identity that we can slowly and surely build up on over years without kind of having to confuse the consumer with the Chefman line of appliances was critical. So it's kind of the impetus for why we wanted to have two separate brand identities around those.
The Chefman is in a lot of different channels. Talk a little bit about the progress around ChefIQ in terms of where your channel penetration has gone in terms of the big box stores and online.
Yeah, so online and Amazon primarily has been a huge boon for our business, and I suspect for a lot of businesses out there, in that you eliminate the gatekeeper. So you can go out and create something really awesome and have a built-in audience if the product has, merits it, to buy into it. Contrast that with your conventional bricks and mortar retailer, where you do have a process that you have to go through in order to slot your product on shelf. But for us, we found a lot of resistance within the conventional channels to embrace smart technology. We had to, it's a continuous chip away at it strategy. We had a fortunate break end of fourth quarter where we had Costco launch in store our wireless cooking thermometers. They took a bet on them.
And is that under ChefIQ brand or Chefman?
That's under the ChefIQ brand, yeah.
Okay, got it.
So that product launched late 2023, far outpaced what they had forecasted, and they're doubling down now. So you'll see us back in Costco with our ChefIQ wireless thermometers late March through the balance of the year. And they put in a really significant buy, which is kind of validates the sell-through and the excitement that the consumer has for products like this. So I think it's critical to find the right value proposition, the right product to apply this sort of technology to, and then working with the partners that have the ability in store to highlight the differential of a product like this versus, say, a wired non-smart. And I think Costco is a great partner for that because they have such a limited SKU count, and every SKU kind of has a measure of ability to get attention from the consumer walking by the aisle.
I mean, I think the wireless thermometer is interesting in that the technology basically enables you to do something that you couldn't have done before, unlike some of the other ovens, right? I mean, putting something in your oven that's wireless, you don't have to have a big wire connected to it, and then being able to remotely monitor the heat, like that's true differentiated value via technology approach. Whereas something like, a smart oven, it's nice to have, but like the core is the cooking component, like that we're all trying to do. So it makes sense why that category is broken out.
Yeah, and I love how you're saying that's kind of how we kind of break it out as well, right? So it's the nice to have awesome little magical moments that this smart technology can offer, but then there are some use applications that are just absolutely essential to have with and only possible to have through being smart enabled. So our wireless thermometer, but it's the thinnest out there. It's the only one out of the box that comes with Wi-Fi. So even the meters, you have to buy an extension pack, and then it's kind of like a booster system. So these work right out of the box via Wi-Fi. It's the most competitively priced wireless cooking thermometer available in the market. And it's robust. We've actually opened our own factory to make them. We had a very difficult time finding a supplier that can work with the minuscule electronics that we've created. So we're completely vertically integrated with this product as well. We've developed an audio component to the product, so you don't need to open the phone. You kind of get voice assistant. So we'll tell you via audio alerts on the hub when it's time to flip your food, remove your food, or take other action in case of flare-ups or whatnot. Yeah, to your wider point, I think why we're very focused on the ecosystem side of things is because we understand what you're putting out, and I think that's the reason that the kitchen is the last really frontier to be conquered. I think a lot of the companies that are yearning to create something exciting are putting out their features that are not needed, especially in a very chaotic environment like the kitchen where things got to be fast, quick, and convenient. And so what we're doing by building these very natural applications is slowly building an ecosystem where the ecosystem over time becomes very essential to the end user. And that kind of locks them into our portfolio of products. So we have a guided cooking element that's available in the app free of charge. It's cuisine from around the world that's formatted in a very easy and replicable format. We built Instacart integration that launched about 7 months ago. And so every recipe on the platform is on demand, with ingredients being delivered within an hour of ordering them. So it's kind of looking at the wider ecosystem and slowly chipping away to build out the functionality that will make our products kind of a staple on people's countertops. And the way we see the future is that if we can have, and we're not stopping with small appliances. We're actually, our next few products in the pipeline are going to be major appliances. We're going into the oven ranges and refrigerators because we understand that those have permanence in the kitchen. And those are very integral to completing our vision of having every product in your kitchen connected under one platform. And what we think is the future of our space is really delving into services that haven't really been fully integrated within the rest of companies' products or ecosystems. So for example, health excites us greatly. If we can curate menus for our customers, if you can meal plan with us, if we can customize diet plans around your particular health or goals or desires, then we can start putting forth these experiences that become very valuable and very essential to the consumer's daily life. And so we look at health as a big opportunity for us. We look at the way recipes currently are shared and kind of how those haven't moved into the future. And so one of the great features we're developing right now is the ability for any one of our users to upload their own recipe in our kind of proprietary format so that they can share it with their followers, their friends, or they can choose to open that up to the general public. If you own a ChefIQ appliance, you can replicate that recipe and get the exact same result. And it doesn't matter what kitchen or who the author of the recipe was, everybody gets the same kind of result. So it's looking at things like that, understanding that that's really the future. And then you get into AI and what AI can do in this space, and you start looking at image, the ability to recognize the food type. You alluded that a little bit earlier to the June, which I think unfortunately was a little early. The technology really isn't where it needs to be for a seamless experience. So I think our vision is to build that slowly, but most importantly is to ensure that the hardware we sell sells at scale, enabling us to reinvest in the software and the different applications that we're working on. And so that's kind of the business model that we're following. And look, very different than I'm sure a lot of people you talk with and a lot of entrepreneurs that have started companies, successful or not. We've never taken outside money. So, my initial start was about $18,000, and we've only reinvested profits back into the business and utilized those to help us, grow out the product line and the vision. And I think that's very critical, is because we're never running too far ahead of ourselves or ahead of reality, right? If a product isn't working at retail or if it's not moving at scale, there's no incentive for us to keep the program moving along and throw good money after bad. So
the fact you never took outside money, I think sometimes outside money can corrupt kind of the visions of the company, because you have to think about what the investors want. So you guys don't have that outside pressure on you, which is interesting. I'm also really fascinated with you moving into built-in appliances. Any idea what the timeline is for that?
So it is our hope to be able to launch our very first product in 2026. So we've already begun work against that. It's something, by the way, I'm super stoked with. It kind of completes the ultimate vision. We look at that industry as ripe for disruption. We think a lot of brands are kind of scared to compete in that space because it's just really never really been done before. I mean, it's the same brands that have been around forever. And the model of how they distribute, the lack of direct to consumer opportunities, the lack of any real hardware innovation, all sets us up for being able to do something that's very differentiative and very exciting for the consumer, and keeping alive all the principles that we follow in terms of design and hardware fabrication, and being able to bring something to market that's truly best in class, that's truly differentiative at price points that are at or below what consumers' expectations are today. And this allows us to innovate at a much more rapid pace because the price points on the larger appliances are a whole lot greater than they are in the small appliance arena. And so you have the margin now to begin to integrate, cameras and all sorts of other wonderful components that otherwise, would be prohibitively expensive, at least the way we see it for the space that we currently play in right now. So it really enables us to unlock the true potential, what we think ChefIQ can offer. And that's kind of why we're going down that path. We feel like we hit the revenue milestones that we needed to in order to support that sort of development. It's there's definitely a lot of development costs in building products of that size. But I've been a big student of like Elon Musk and others, and kind of watching how they engineer and build their hardware. There are fantastic companies, prototyping companies, and that exist right here in the United States. You can get a lot further than people think without ever even moving to the factory phase and to mass production. And
it's exciting. Well, we're going to be watching from afar, and as you continue to roll out your new products, and it'd be interesting to watch the move into built-ins. I agree with you. That's an area that is ripe for disruption because by and large it has been the same type of stuff that we've seen for a long time. So it'll be interesting to watch some newcomers into the space. So Ralph Newhouse, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for sharing all this information with me.
Yeah, Michael, thank you. It was a pleasure.
All right, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Ralph. I hope you learned a lot. I know I did, including some news that I think we broke here on the podcast about them coming out with their oven that they will be bringing out at the Housewares Show, and that they will be going potentially into built-in ovens in the future. Ralph has big plans with the company. It was interesting to hear about their evolution of their tech stack and where he sees that going. So overall, great conversation. And if this is of interest to you, you'll definitely want to be at the Smart Kitchen Summit. Head to smartkitchensummit.com. I'd love to see you in Seattle, June 4th and 5th. You can use the special podcast listener only discount code podcast, all capital letters podcast. Put that in the coupon code when you buy your ticket to get 15% off tickets. All right, folks, that's it for now. We'll talk to you soon.